Moving on.
Not to like completely turn into what I'm sure is every single MCU YouTube account, which I'm sure exists, but like, who should play Doctor Doom?
I don't know.
Like, who actually like the thing about Doctor Doom that I actually genuinely love now that I've read a few Doom runs, like I read Infamous Iron Man, which was fucking incredible. I am familiar with Doom and I really like Doom. Like, I don't know if anyone can command one, the presence, and two, the like incredible mix of completely self-aware and completely unaware that Doctor Doom is.
No, it's tough because Doom is... Look, I've said it a lot, but Doom is the perfect comic book villain.
He kind of is, yeah.
And, like, the reason he's the perfect comic book villain is partly because of, like, 50 goddamn years of, like, history behind the character.
Yeah.
And I just don't know who can do it. I have no idea. And it's one of those situations where, like, I'm kind of just shrugging my shoulders and going, like, it's someone else's job to figure this out. Look, Hollywood has a lot of good casting directors, and it's their job to figure it out.
Wow, this Screen Rant article is really bad.
No, Screen Rant.
Yeah, it does. It has Patrick Warburton on it.
I love Patrick Warburton. He's a fun actor who's done some fun roles.
Hey, Mr. Fantastic! What are you doing?
There's a very specific... Here's what I'll say. I could see Patrick Warburton as Doom in like one episode of a comedy Fantastic Four series that lasts 5 episodes.
Yes.
But I don't want that Fantastic Four series because I don't think it would be...
Patrick Warburton could not... Listen, I love Patrick Warburton. Brock Sampson somehow was an incredible character despite being incredibly one note. He could not be Dr. Doom.
Here's the thing, like... who was it? Who was MODOK recently?
Oh, I need to watch that series because it's on Hulu, and I haven't heard anything about it, so it might be bad, but that makes me want to watch it more because I'm fucked up.
Well, they recently
because
incorporated...
Patton Oswalt is in that series, but I don't know if he is MODOK.
No, he's MODOK, yeah. And it's one of those things where, like, who should play MODOK? Patton Oswalt? No. Except they did it, and apparently, like, it might work. Again, it's like some weird comedy series.
Yeah, I was going to say, because, like, MODOK at this point is not respected, right? Like, MODOK is just kind of a throw in every now and then. Sure, do something with MODOK. He's a fucking weirdo.
Yeah, and, like, they apparently recently incorporated the, like, animated version of MODOK into the comics. And it's one of those situations where, like, it seems like a bad idea, but I could see it in, like, an isolated joke kind of thing. So Patrick Warburton as Dr. Doom would be fun, again, in, like, 1 or 2 episodes of a 5-episode limited series. I don't know. It's a bad idea unless, like, it's extremely limited, in which case it could be fun. Because part of the thing that makes Doom great is that he is a good comedy character.
Yes. Like,
and
it is
Patrick Warburton... Or, go on.
Just, Doctor Doom is, like, distinctly comic book in a way that is pulp, it is fun, it can be serious, but ultimately, like, it's comic book. It knows what it is. Yeah.
And so, like, Patrick Warburton as comedy Doctor Doom is probably fine. But I don't want only comedy Doctor Doom.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's expected to be, like, pull more than, like, 1 episode of weight, then I wouldn't want that. But if it's, like, 1 episode, sure. Like, I could see him as comedy Doctor Doom. But then, like, Doctor Doom is also, like, explicitly, like, an Eastern European guy. And I have no idea how to translate that in the modern, like, world.
Yeah, because Latveria is, like, vaguely Baltic, I think.
No, it's definitely like Balkan.
It's Balkan, not Baltic.
No, yeah, it's definitely like Romania area.
I guess. Well, no, because like Transylvania is a thing too, because fucking because Dracula exists.
Yes, I'm tracking Draco's progress with great interest because currently the Vampire Nation is a thing in X-Men comics, and
Right,
it's
because
like,
Jubilee was was a vampire for a while.
yes, that's now been like resolved and
Yes,
is not
by Kid
currently
Omega,
sure. Why not?
because in the he's in the like fun West Coast Avengers run from like 2012 or whatever.
Yes, I'm vaguely aware.
Just to be like the over because they're shooing in order to like get the funding since Kate Bishop's like, okay, this is great, guys, but like my dad is a supervillain, so I don't have money anymore. We need to get money somehow, so they're shooting a reality TV series.
Of course.
And so, because like none of them are like household names, because it's like Kate Bishop, Gwenpool, Kate Bishop's like two friends who are new to comic books, like they were introduced in West Coast Adventures, and Hawkeye pops in. The other Hawkeye pops in every now and then, but they're like, we need funding, so we're gonna get oh, what's his fucking name besides Kid Omega?
Quentin Quire.
Quentin Quire. They're like, we're gonna get him because he is super super fucking powerful, and so he will get ratings.
Well, yeah, he is one of the few Omega level mutants.
He is an Omega level mutant.
And they can't get rid of that because his name is Kid Omega.
Yeah, exactly. But at one point, he wears a shirt that says, I devamped Jubilee, and all I got was the stupid t-shirt. And so later I figured out what the fuck that meant.
Yeah, well, like, Jubilee's whole shtick has been, like, she's, I don't know, I'm far away from 90s X-Men, and honestly, I've not decided if I'm going to deal with 90s X-Men yet. I might just skip it.
Is that when it explodes?
Yeah, that's when it explodes, and that's when, like, a lot of people are like, oh, it gets kind of bad around then.
Gotcha.
And a lot of, like, X-Men fans have just been like, I'm not going to deal with 90s X-Men. Who cares? And it really doesn't matter, but, Jubilee is, like, one of, like, Wolverine's whole shtick is that he likes, attaching himself to, like, this is gonna sound weird, but like a younger female character.
Yeah, no, he's the father. He's always the father figure, right? Like
he's always an unwilling father figure.
Yeah.
And he and Jubilee is that for a while, but then like she exists in like the 90s, and then just doesn't change, and so like we'll just make her a vampire, I guess. To like kind of explain why she hasn't changed since the 90s.
She hangs around with Hellcat for a while. There's a fun little like 10 comic run called Patsy Walker is Hellcat that's very fun and cute. And right. Jubilee hangs out for a little bit with them.
Yeah.
It actually, sure. Like, I think it probably should get a little more attention because it does a fun thing with like, hey, like, what if someone is a mutant or has superpowers and they just don't fucking want to, like, be a superhero? So the entire comic's basically her just trying to set up a temp agency for people who have powers. And it's just like, well, find a job that works for you, for your powers. So you, like, you know, can use them productively, but also, like, I don't know, you don't have to.
Yeah, that's something that isn't dealt with enough in, like, comics. Especially, like, in like, mutant stuff, but also just in comics in general.
Yeah, like I will say that is one of like the better things about My Hero Academia is like 80% of the world or something like that has quirks. So like you just see people who just have superpowers who just, you know, do things, but there's only like there's registered heroes, a la Civil War. So like not everyone is, and that's okay.
Yeah, and then like with comics, they've kind of tried to bring it into, like, X-Men lore that, like, actually, there are a lot of mutants. And a lot of their powers are not, like, useful to, you know, fighting. But then they did the decimation and undid all that stuff.
Yeah, they did. I need to read the stuff that led into House of M, because there was stuff that was super, like, Wanda kills half of the Avengers, and, I think that's also about the time when how did the smaller one win? I think that's also about
Guile?
Sure. Because the lead into Immortal Hulk is that Bruce Banner straight up tells Hawkeye to murder him?
Yes, there's something to do with I don't know. I like the problem is that there's a lot of crossover stuff in like the 2000s or 2010s. And in one of them, Bruce Banner like tells Hawkeye to kill him in a certain situation, and then that situation is met. But again, it's one of in like it's like it's. I think it might be the one when Nick Fury becomes the Watcher.
Nick Fury becomes the Watcher?
Yes, and like the reason I stated it, the reason I stated it like that is because it's pretty dumb and kind of ridiculous, and no one likes it because it's good. But that's what happened. So I don't know.
Weird. Okay, so they're both going that. Wait, no. Are you going after the one that we were already hitting?
Yeah, I might as well just kill it.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
But yeah, so
I don't know. Comic books remain good.
no, they are very good. Everyone loves comic books, and by that I mean I love comic books.
Yeah, and I love them too. At this point, I visited my family yesterday because I was just like, okay, I actually have a free weekend. I should go up for a day and then drive back because I can. It's been a while, but I went to a Half Price Books, and I bought two things. I bought a Blu-ray of the Blues Brothers because I do not actually own the Blues Brothers.
Ooh.
So that's exciting. And then I bought The Death of Superman as my first DC comic.
There's some great DC comics that I need to read.
And I don't know if Death of Superman is actually well regarded, but I do know that it's very big. It's a big deal because it's the death of Superman.
Yeah, and it is probably one of the better selling comics ever.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm with you on that. I'm definitely going to read Death of Superman at some point, but I don't particularly want to.
Yeah, I get that.
I hear it's kind of a mess. And like part of the issue is that like what it created was definitely a huge mess, but I think the comic might be okay. I don't know.
I mean, I definitely understand that. It is very possibly just like they were just like, well, we need to sell comics. It's the 90s. Let's do the unthinkable. Let's kill Superman just to get attention.
Yeah, and like that's the thing is like I have trouble separating Death of Superman from its quality versus like kind of its notoriety, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Where like I understand it to be a very notorious comic, and it might be good. It truly might, but like who knows? And I think it's written by Louise Simonson, an author I think is generally pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Like because the Simonsons were a couple that wrote a lot of like good comics in like the 80s. They were like involved in a lot of like Marvel stuff in the 80s, and it was generally considered pretty good. They were involved in like the 80s X-Men, which was always considered pretty good. And I know that Walt Simonson was involved in like 80s Thor, which pretty much anything that like is good about Thor was created during his run.
Oh, really?
Like Surtur, like Surtur from.
Yes, he is Ragnarok.
Yes, he is like 80s Thor, the like ice elves or whatever is 80s Thor.
I mean, dark elves and ice giants are two different things.
Well, yeah, dark elves and then the ice giants, whatever. Beta Ray Bill is a Walt Simonson creation.
I know people really like Beta Ray Bill, and I started to read one, but I was just like, I don't know how I feel about this, but maybe I'll go back.
No, I like him because he's kind of just this weird thing, but
I mean, because anyway. Beta Ray Bill is worthy. right?
Yes.
Like that's the whole thing.
Yes, that's the whole shtick. Is that like it was the first time anyone but Thor like raised the hammer.
Beta Ray Bill was the first.
Yeah, because well,
They didn't even do fucking Captain America before they did Beta Ray Bill.
Nope. You have to understand the Thor comic used to be really weird.
Should I go to the one in the north or the south?
I don't know. Like,
Okay.
It really doesn't matter.
It doesn't. This one's closer.
You have to understand that, like, the Thor comic was really weird. Like, Thor had, like, a Superman secret identity for a while.
Yeah. He was a man with a cane. I forget his name, but...
I don't remember. But the whole idea being that, like, he was, like, forced to... He was forced to, be a human by Odin, but then, like, he was a human, but he was also Thor. But then Thor was forced to be him or something. It was very weird, and they abandoned it pretty quickly. And then, like, the idea that, like, the assumption was always that, like, Thor was the only one worthy. And so the worthiness was kind of like a side thing. And then Walt was first guy was like, what if there was someone else who was worthy? Then I guess it blew everyone's minds. Who was, like, vaguely connected with Thor, which was, like, one person.
Huh. I mean, I understand why, like, being like, hey, what if we, like, took the literal interpretation of what it says on Mjolnir to be like, anyone who holds this hammer is worthy, and not to just be, yeah, it's Thor, you're Thor, but to be like, hey, if someone is worthy, they have the same powers, they just aren't Thor.
Yeah.
Like, that is a pretty, like, I don't know if that exists in places other than Marvel Comics, and Norse mythology is around.
Yeah. No, early Thor comics were really weird. Like, a lot of early comics were pretty weird. Besides, like, Spider-Man and, like, Fantastic Four. Like, the comics were just very strange and were, like... It took until, like, people who weren't Stan Lee and Jack Kirby to, like, actually create what we understand to be, like, the comics that everyone loves. Like, X-Men didn't get good until, like, the 80s.
I mean, it makes sense that, like...
The same as with, like, Thor and a couple others.
It makes sense that, like, as a medium in, like, the 50s and 60s, it was just like, these are the guys who are the pioneers and everyone else is just kind of around. And then it's the next generation after that's just like, okay, let's start, like, expanding on this, telling different stories, figuring out how to make it, like, more compelling inherently.
Yeah.
And now, you know, there's 60 years worth of shit to read across several major publishers.
Yeah. I think I've heard comics called, like, the greatest group storytelling thing ever created, and that's probably true, honestly.
Yeah, and I think, like, that is actually extremely exemplified in Hulk, in Immortal Hulk. Like,
yeah.
Because, like, even if I didn't know, like, the context for every single, like, character who was brought around in that, like, it was explained well enough that I could track what was going on and still be incredibly engaged and enjoy what they were doing.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about, like, how if you thought of something, it probably already exists in the comic book, and I remember listening to, like, some podcast thing a while ago, and it was some NPR thing where they're, like, usually economics people, and they this is very, like, interesting situation where they end up bringing back, like, an old comic because they wanted to. I think it was kind of like a thought experiment, more or less, where they're like, can we bring back an old comic and modernize it? And they found, like, a comic book character that had fallen into the public domain because it was an independent comic book character, and decided, like, we're gonna bring this into the 21st century. And it was an independent comic book character from, like, the 50s that no one had done anything with for, like, 40 years or something.
Uh-huh.
And they did it. They like brought it back, and it was kind of funny because like people who read like DC and Marvel comic books forget that like there were like a ton of independent comic book creators that existed for like decades.
Oh yeah,
that,
that like Batman. DC was Batman Detective Comics, like
yeah, and Marvel used to be Mirage.
Superman was Action Comics.
Yeah, and then they all got like kind of. You had like companies that had like a bunch of characters, and then you also had a bunch of independent guys who just existed.
Yeah.
And a bunch of those ended up getting kind of like sucked up into the big ones, but they existed. Like, if you want to, you can find them.
How much of like cartoon, like, you know, cartoon strips in like the Sunday morning papers and all of that? There are some things that like Dick Tracy that are serial enough that I'm like, do these exist as comics as well, or were they only ever like week by week strips?
Yeah, I don't think Dick Tracy exists as a comic, but no, like that's definitely an aspect of it. Well, like comics were kind of a side thing from those things.
I'm hiding in the corpse. It cannot see me if I become one with the Diablos.
Yes.
I was right.
It's gone.
Anyway, now I need to find something new to read after I fucking blitzed through 50 comics.
Yeah, which is, like 4 hours of reading.
It was a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, yes. And I actually read a decent amount over spring break. I read the Ironheart run, and I also read all of the context going into it. So I read Infamous Iron Man and the main Iron Man run at the time, where for like 5 comics, Riri Williams was the only Well, she was formally taking over for Tony Stark while he was away for a number of reasons, and Doctor Doom was informally taking over, and it was so fucking... Doctor Doom's Iron Man armor is so cool! I hate how much I love it. I'm like, fuck.
I've read the first like book of Infamous Iron Man, and I've always meant to like continue it. And now that I have Unlimited, I should. But the first book was very good.
Yeah.
And I remember people really liked that comic when it came out.
I don't know, like the idea of, like, I guess this does happen ultimately all of the time in comic books where villain turns into good guy. But like the idea of Doctor Doom trying to be good is the thing that makes Doctor Doom so interesting to me, because he's so, like, it feels like something Doctor Doom should always be trying to do.
Yes, right? Like Doctor Doom is always a borderline like hero, like, or like anti-hero.
Yes. Because he like is a genius. He obviously knows that he wants the world to prosper. He just also has like severe problems because of the way he was raised and the environment he was raised, so he cannot be good.
Yeah, he's very, like, Lex Luthor in a lot of ways, where, like, his whole shtick is that, like, I would be good if the heroes didn't exist to drag me down. And, like, that's much more, like, a defining factor of Lex Luthor, but, like, it definitely exists in Doctor Doom, too, where, like...
Yeah, I mean, that's all over Immortal Iron Man, is, like, his imagined inferiority complex with Mr. Fantastic. Is he thinks that Reed Richards thinks he's better than him, so he cannot let that be true.
Yeah, one of the interesting aspects of All-Star Superman, a comic you should definitely read. Okay. I'll lend it to you at some point.
Okay, good, because I feel like I'm at a point where I'm going to start branching into DC, too.
I've got a couple good DC comics you should read, and I can lend them to you. But also Superman, like, the shtick was that it was, like, what if we got some very good writers to take their interpretation of X character and just run with it and do their own thing. And it produced All-Star Superman and All-Star Batman. And All-Star Superman is one of the greatest comics ever written, and All-Star Batman is very bad. But it didn't really like work out, but it did
so
create
they really
All-Star
showed off
Superman.
The highs and lows of that idea right at once.
Yeah. And All-Star Superman is honestly, it is my favorite comic of all time.
Oh,
and
really?
Nothing has unseated it. I will lend it to you at some point, and you should definitely read it.
I think Squirrel Girl might still be my favorite. I've read a decent amount since Squirrel Girl, but it does a lot of good things in a very comic book way, including some like incredibly, incredibly genuine moments that I think are very important to who I am as an adult. Just I don't know. I'm all about content that tries to be genuine in its emotions.
I think you'll like also Superman then.
Yeah, because like I have always imagined I would be more of a Superman guy than a Batman guy, because Superman is about someone who tries always to do the best he can, right? Like that's the thing with Superman, is he always tries.
Yes. But one of the aspects of it is that like, well, I'll just like one of the exchanges is like Lex Luthor tells Superman like I could have saved the world if it wasn't for you, and Superman responds like you could have saved the world if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah, it's like you could have saved the world with me, Lex. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, and like it is like kind of a really great distillation of Lex's character, where like he's like a super genius that like controls 10% of the world's business or whatever. Like if he really wanted to, he could do anything he wanted.
Yeah.
He could save the world. He could cure cancer. He has the resources to do it, but he chooses not to.
But he wants to turn people into dinosaurs.
Yes, exactly, because he feels inferior. And that there's a strong element of that to Doom.
Yeah. Yes. Like, I would agree.
It's not like fully. It's not as important to his character as it is to like Lex Luthor's. But there is a strong element where, like, if Doom wanted to, he could cure cancer. He's like one of the more powerful magicians. He's one of like the top 5 smartest people on Earth. He controls an entire country, but he chooses not to because he needs to stick it to like his enemies.
I think another reason why I like Dr. Doom is because it's just like, what if Batman was evil, but also Batman was the greatest wizard of all time?
Yes, he is a phenomenal character. Look, again, I've always felt that Dr. Doom is the best comic book villain, and that is not to say he's like the most meaningful or the smartest comic book villain or whatever from like a literary standpoint.
No, like, it's absolutely just like, what if we made the most overpowered douchebag and made him evil?
Yeah, and like he is like the smartest, one of the smartest on Earth. He is one of the most powerful like magicians on Earth. He is just like an all around, like if you were to take like an Iron Man, like he is just one of the best Iron Men on Earth. And also he's just a fucking douchebag. But then he's also like the pettiest douchebag. Also. So like,
but also he's smart enough to like recognize that he is a bad person.
Yeah, like he is the pettiest douchebag, but he's also the smartest pettiest douchebag, but he's also the dumbest pettiest douchebag, and he has all of those things, and like it still somehow works. Like you can put him in any comic book, and like, oh, Dr. Doom's the villain of this comic book, and it's like, yeah, sure, that makes sense, and you can replace like that comic book can be fucking Squirrel Girl or like Luke Cage or like Doom has remade the Earth in his image.
Yeah,
and like all of these make sense.
And I think like Doom. I don't remember if it was like 2018 or plus or minus 2 years of 2018, but there is like a 10 or 12 comic run that is just called Doom, I think.
Yes, I'm aware of it, and I need to read it.
Yeah, and like the entire thing is like Doom is plagued by visions of himself doing good, and like him doing good has created a utopia.
Well, yeah, and that makes perfect sense. Like, yes, if Doom decided that he wanted to be a hero, could literally solve all of Earth's problems.
Yep.
And like, yeah, that's a very comic thing, but like within the like comics of Marvel, that makes sense. And
like, you should read this because like I think the thing that ultimately makes it a very good comic is just like it turns Doctor Doom into he's just a tragic figure. Like Doctor Doom is a tragedy ultimately because he could be so much and he is so close, but he is incapable. Yep.
No, and that's one of the reasons I love Doctor Doom as a comic villain is because he is, to an extent, a tragic figure.
Yeah.
he could be so much better than he is, but because of like the realities of the comic he's in, and also just like the character he is, it's
like,
not going to happen.
It's like if the Bible were for funsies, and like he is Satan, he is the fallen angel. What
an amazing way to summarize comic books.
If the Bible was for funsies?
Yes.
I think you should blow him up, because I think actually it turns out gun lances are bad at waking things up.
All right, give me 1 second.
Anyway, this Screen Rant article does have 2 actors who I recognize, who I think could be decent Dooms. One is Viggo Mortensen.
What's that?
Viggo Mortensen?
Ooh, yeah, that could work.
And the other is Timothy Olyphant.
Timothy Olyphant as Doctor Doom is a very specific kind of Doctor Doom that I don't think would be like great, but I could see.
But I do think I would like to at least see like a test screening of Viggo Mortensen.
I could see Viggo Mortensen. I think he's kind of like the outside of left field Doom that works. I don't know. He's a tough character because, like we've been talking about, Doctor Doom is a firmly comic book character, and
he is so much.
Yeah, like it's just hard to find a good movie actor version of him.
This is really making me want my next read to just go through the go through Fantastic Four from the beginning as much as is on Marvel Unlimited, to just watch Doom happen in real time.
I think that would be fun. Fantastic Four is always a comic I've wanted to be more into than I am. It's always funny to remember how big Fantastic Four was. Because
in my just dabblings around, the Thing pops up so much.
It's because the Thing is the best comic book character.
Yeah,
but yeah,
you're a big Ben Grimm guy.
I'm a big Ben Grimm guy, but it is definitely true that the Thing is just a beloved character both in universe and out. Everybody loves the Thing, and that's true of every individual human in the Marvel universe, and also just every comic book reader.
Have I told you my problem with when the Fantastic Four is eventually a movie?
No, go ahead.
Or when I watch the Fan-4 and all of that shit?
No, I don't think you have. Go ahead.
I will be unable to reconcile the fact that there is someone voicing Ben Grimm who does not sound like Sergeant Hatred.
You know what? That's extremely fair.
Because every single time I read the Thing say any piece of dialogue anywhere he pops up in my head, it's just Sergeant Hatred's voice.
I think that's fair. I think with Ben Grimm, you either go extreme how do I put this Brooklyn Jewish energy,
which he is. Yeah, he talks about how it comes up so much how he gets he goes through a bar mitzvah 13 years or 15 years or whatever it is after he becomes the Thing.
Yeah, which is a very good bit.
But also, I think that's so genuine and interesting that he genuinely sees this as a kind of birth for himself. This is a rebirth for who he is as a person, and he still has religion. That's so interesting in this universe.
Yeah, I think the fundamental issue with the Thing is that they go through waves of somebody finally they're okay, he's finally okay being the Thing, but then that's what I'm looking for. The oh god, I'm spacing here. The conflict of being the Thing is what drives a lot of the comic books that have the Thing. So right. Somebody everyone gets to the point where he's okay being the Thing, and then the next writer immediately undoes it because they need to be the one to get him to be okay with being the Thing.
Yeah, he has to have his internal conflict about
what
cosmic rays have turned him into.
Yes, exactly. And so that always ends up happening, but like the idea of him like reaching the point where he's okay being the thing and just living with it is like obviously like the most interesting aspect of it. But then no one can allow him to do it. But like obviously like the whole like bar mitzvah with being the thing is like kind of the culmination of being fundamentally okay with being the thing. And
Right.
it's a great plot point that would be really great if it didn't switch authors every like 2 years.
If it didn't happen every 5 minutes.